So, Bean, before Richard comes in,
Yeah, go ahead.
how do we handle the dickish part of him? What do we do we tell him to his face, or what?
I think you're
how does
confusing
that-
Richard Blade with maybe somebody else. Richard Blade is not that guy, but he is here at KROQ once again, ladies and gentlemen, on the Kevin and Bean Show. How are you, sir?
KROQ. Hey, I am fine. It's so great to see you guys. And I got something for Ali because I know you have been waiting, I think it was like 32 years for this. I apologize. I ran out of them at the Glendale Galleria. So I brought that for you.
The stories that you tell in your new book that's out today called World in My Eyes, you had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people writing you, sending you letters through the mail asking for photos back in the early days of you being on KROQ, which was insane to me to think about.
Yeah, it was, well, there was no internet. There was no way to reach out and see what your favorite DJ looked like, or the new guy, as I was at the time. And someone asked me on the air when we were taking the calls live, because we had no digital delay or anything like that, and they said, can you send a photograph? So I said, sure, just send me an envelope and I'll send you one back. And then I had no idea what that was starting. And and so I had Scott Mason, God rest his soul, great guy, take a photograph of me behind the building against a brick wall. And we went to Photomat and got 250 made. And I thought that would last me about 4 years, and they were gone by the weekend. It was just crazy. That was the only way to get it out to people back then.
When did you start at KROQ?
I started on June 18th, 1982.
Wow.
That is over 35 years ago,
Yeah,
Richard.
and it was amazing. It was life-changing. And I say in the book several times about KROQ that they never paid their bills. No, I said...
Oh, that's true.
I said that KROQ is one of the two most important radio stations in the history of this planet. KROQ and BBC Radio 1 are the two most important stations, because KROQ definitely for North America and for helping the British bands, and BBC Radio 1 for breaking all kinds of music, whether it's American, Australian, English, whatever. But those two stations, there's never been stations like that.
When Bean and I started, we were, scared because it was KROQ.
Right.
And we didn't want to ruin it. And we were scared. We didn't know what the DJs would be like and how they would accept us or not accept us. And you couldn't have been more kind.
Oh, well, you guys...
You and everybody on the staff was so kind. I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, are they faking? Are they really this nice? You're really this nice.
Well, the thing was, when Rick Carroll put the staff together, he didn't want fake people on the air, because back in the early 80s, everyone's, hey, it's 15 minutes past the hour. We've got a great song coming up. I just love this one. And he did not want that. He wanted us to sound like we were. So that's why you had Jed with his incredible laugh and his nonsensical words from time to time, which was
Most
brilliant.
of the time, yeah.
Which is brilliant. And then Freddie with his dry sense of humor, and Dusty with, boyfriend, come over here. And it was just great. And you could be yourself. And I think the listeners really related to that, because suddenly there was this radio station on the air that wasn't just playing to them, it was part of them. And we became their friend through the good times and the bad times.
That's when I loved KROQ.
Yeah.
It's changed.
Allie, hey, come on.
What?
We're on the on now.
Sorry.
Richard, you give the station credit for all the bands they broke, but a lot of that, particularly with the British bands, was your love of the music that you had left back home, and the fact that your dad was still, mailing you Duran Duran records and Tears for Fears records and things like that. And back then, and this is hard to believe in the 21st century, but back then, if you found a song you liked, you could play it on the radio, and you introduced KROQ listeners to hundreds of songs just because you liked them.
Well, yeah, I would listen to them, and if they were good, I would play them. And Rick Carroll, rest his soul, he had a philosophy. He said, here's your music key, here's what you play, unless you've got something better. He said, but if you...
That's changed.
If it's not, he said, if it's not better, then you're going to answer to me. If it is better, I'm going to call you up on the hotline and say, great job. And when
there are very few guys in charge of radio that would say that.
Oh, absolutely.
And none now.
None now, but very few even in history.
Yeah. Well, I do give Kevin Weatherly a lot of credit.
Too much, some would say.
No, I think...
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, of all the programmers that I've ever known and worked with, I think Rick Carroll, if he could come back from the grave, he would have picked Kevin Weatherly.
Is that right?
Kevin, I think, rescued KROQ at a very rough period. And
I agree. He has shepherded it through a long time.
Absolutely,
for sure.
He's a genius. And
I tell people this all the time, Richard. Tell me if you think if I'm wrong, if I'm just being overly dramatic, but we take KROQ for granted because it's been around since the 1970s, but there's no guarantee it's going to be around in a year or in 5 years. I mean, this business changes, and there's an economics aspect to it that is not easy in this format. And every day that KROQ is still on the air, I think, is a miracle.
Well, I kind of agree, but I think it would be a tragedy if KROQ went away.
Of course it would.
Because particularly as we get older, there's so many people that KROQ is a part of their youth. I mean, it was a part of Southern California and growing up. And they look at it as a brother or a sister. And I do gigs all the time. I mean, Allie, you see me in the clubs. And I do private parties. And it's amazing how the people come up and they've all got a story. And they all love Kevin and Bean. They all say that.
Wow.
They all say,
but
it's true. They all say, I still listen to Kevin and Bean. And, but why do you play Foo Fighters so much or whatever, And I always say, it's not KROQ, it's the music. We don't make the music. We just play the music. And so
imagine if we made the music.
Oh.
This would be so bad.
Hello, everybody. This is a song.
Let me read this sentence from Richard Blade's new book that's available wherever you get books. It's called World in My Eyes, and you know Richard, so you know where that title came from. But here's a line from page 435. Listeners would and continue to come up to me and say that my morning show was much better than Kevin and Bean's. Thank you for that, Richard.
Yeah. Carry on reading. Carry on.
Oh, but in all honesty, I have to disagree. Okay, he does. You did the morning show here at KROQ just before we did, right?
Yeah, and then I left the morning show for about 6 months before you arrived, and someone else was doing it. Mm-hmm. And then
someone who gets a very short shrift in the book, by the way. Was that on purpose?
Well, yes and no, because the book's called World in My Eyes. And I actually asked Martin Gore if I could use that title because I thought it was
Allie
perfect.
just fainted.
Yeah, and I know it's not copyrighted and I could have used it, but I'm really good friends with the band. So I called Martin and I said, look, here's the book, here's what it's about. It is the world in my eyes. It's the things that were important to me. And that's why there's a lot in Europe and the crazy disco days and all that kind of stuff.
And you being a man whore.
And me being a man whore, yeah. And so Martin, he said, let me think about it. And I'll get back to you. The next morning, I woke up and there was an email from him. He said, I wanted to put it in writing. I would be thrilled for you to use World in My Eyes. And it was like, wow. I was blown away because if he'd have said no, I would have not been angry at all. I would have moved on. But
you would have contacted The Cure. Said, I want to use yours.
That's right. Yeah, Friday, I'm in love.
There are so many wonderful stories about so many acts that you've been close to over the years, from Billy Idol to Morrissey to the Pet Shop Boys to George Michael. But your Depeche Mode chapter about two things mainly. One is the 101 concert at the Rose Bowl, which was one of the most unbelievable things that ever got pulled off. Nobody could believe that happened. Right. And the other is, and I think you know what I'm going to say, the in-store at the warehouse at the Beverly Center with 20,000 people.
Yep, you were there.
We were there.
We were briefly, there. And we were running from it, but we need to take a break.
Oh, no, come on.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
We will. So we'll take
Why are you a bad person?
We'll take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the time Richard started a riot.
That's a band that just played the last couple of nights at the Observatory in Santa Ana, and they're going to be there again tonight. So if you get a chance, go and see The Offspring. It's Richard Blade here at the world-famous KROQ. Coming up in a minute, we're going to go to the phone lines. But right now, let's have a few words with Kevin and Bean and see what's going on with them.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is how it is done right there.
All right, when we broke, we started to talk about the in-store with Depeche Mode.
Right.
And that was when Bean... What year was that?
That was in 1990. That was to celebrate the release of Violator.
That's the year Bean and I started. Right. And I remember thinking, oh, this is bad. Oh, my God, this is bad. And let's get out of here. And Bean and I literally ran from that scene.
Well, what happened was Howie Klein over at Warner Brothers said he wanted to make a statement with Depeche Mode because we'd done the Rose Bowl, we'd sold it out, and that was 2 years before, and Violator was coming. There was a huge buzz on it because Personal Jesus was the first single from that and had been released about 5 months before and became the biggest selling 12-inch in Warner Brothers history. So they said, wow, this is it. Now we're in the position we could do something with Depeche Mode. So Howie and I brainstormed, and it was like, should we do a rooftop performance? And like, no, no, you two have done that, and the Beatles did that. That would just be a copycat. And, well, let's do another concert. No, you can't top the Rose Bowl.
Right.
And Howie said, what about an in-store? And I said, look, I did one with Billy Idol about 6 years ago at Music Plus on Vine Street. And I said, the windows nearly came in, 6,000 people showed up. I said, it was crazy. I said, if we did it with Depeche Mode now, it would be wild. And Howie said, what would happen? I said, the streets would be closed down. It would just be ridiculous. And he goes, do you think the press would cover that? I said, of course they would cover that. Oh, I see where we're going.
They couldn't have been more upset.
And he said, do you think there'd be problems? I said, well, if you were doing it with Slayer, maybe, or Winger. But I said, Depeche Mode fans aren't violent. I think they would just stand in line to meet their heroes. And he said, well, let's do that then. And that became the statement. British bands shut down LA streets. That was the idea, and it exceeded, of course, everyone's expectations.
Yes,
well, there were 20,000 people in the streets.
Yeah, and, it was amazing.
And the problem was, Depeche Mode was awesome. They said, hey, we'll stay and meet everybody. We'll stay inside everybody. And then people started doing the math, as you point out in the book, and realized it was going to take a week for them to get through that many people. It wasn't going to happen, so they started getting kind of agitated and started banging on the windows and the whole deal. That was a scary night, Richard.
Oh, it was. And then after you guys got out, the police shut down the warehouse and nobody inside could leave for 2 hours because the streets outside, they had to make sure the streets were clear.
They had riot police, everything. Yeah. Oh, it's pretty sweet.
It was.
Richard Blade is our guest. Before we go to the calls, by the way, I want to mention again, the book is out now. It's tremendous. It's called World in My Eyes, and it's about so much more than just Richard's KROQ years, although that's a significant part of the book with all the bands you love from here. But the stories that you tell about you being a DJ for hire, basically, spinning records for people at parties.
Yep.
You did parties for, well, I'll let you drop some names here, Richard, because it blew my mind to see the parties that you'd done.
Well, you might not know these names because they're not KROQ acts, but one is Barbara something. Barbara
Streisand.
Barbara Streisand. Have you heard of her?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Richard played her son's bar mitzvah.
Yeah. Her and Elliot Gould's son.
That's insane.
Jason.
Okay.
And then I was doing a party for Zsa Zsa Gabor. And,
okay.
Well, but that's not the big name drop.
Okay.
She was in one of the stilt homes in the Hollywood Hills.
Right.
So she was upstairs with all the guests, including my all-time favorite actor, Moneypenny, do you think you could do this for me? Sean Connery. Yeah, but I was downstairs. I didn't even have time to put that in the book, really, because I was downstairs in the game room that had all been cleared out. They'd moved the billiard table and everything. I had all my DJ gear set up, my Sewin Vegas. I was ready to go. And I'm sitting there alone, and this kid comes in, and he says, can I look through your music? I said, sure. So he's flipping through, and he pulls out Earth, Wind and Fire and Marvin Gaye, and he goes, could you play it? And I said, yeah, I can't do it too loud because the eating upstairs. So I put it on, he gets out there and he starts dancing, and I was like, wow, to be in a room with Michael Jackson watching him dance was amazing. And then I said to him,
Hold please. The kid and you, the only two people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Richard Blade,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson. Yeah.
Okay. And then he does what?
And then I said, I got your new album. So I played a track for him from that, and he had all the moves down to that because he was working out moves to the Marvin Gaye song.
Sure.
And then he was all excited, and he said, do you have a cassette player? Because that was state of the art at the time, right?
Sure.
So I said, no, I'm only streaming Spotify. So I said, yeah, I got a cassette player. And he said, I'll be right back. And he ran out to his car and came back in with a cassette. And he said, we've just been working on this in the studio, and we put the cassette in. And as I said in the book, I was so blown away by watching him develop the moves. I don't know if it was Off the Wall, Rock With You, or Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, but it was one of those three songs.
So he was basically rehearsing his dance moves while you played them.
Yeah, and it was unbelievable. And I was stunned. I mean, 30 minutes, because I grew up with the Jackson 5, Dancing Machine, all that. The Jackson 5 were huge in England. And so, I mean, I was like Michael Jackson. And then the party ended, and of course, I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again. And about 5 days later, I got a call from Epic Records and said, Michael asked if you would do the launch party for their Victory album and the Victory Tour. So
that's unbelievable.
So I did that, and that made the front page of the Los Angeles Times.
Guys, the book is just packed with stories just like that. I mean, Richard is a Forrest Gump is what he is. He's everywhere doing everything. All right, speaking of the book, we're going to run out of time, so let's squeeze in a couple of calls real quick. Betty is on line one. She's in Woodland Hills. She has a question about The World in My Eyes, new book from Richard Blade.
Hey, Betty.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
I am great, Betty. How are you doing, sweetheart?
Marge and I are doing great. We went on Amazon.com. We just purchased your book, hard copy.
Oh, thank you.
Now, how long did it take? It's not a short book.
No, it's not. It's 512 pages and lots of photos.
Did you have a ghostwriter?
No, I say that right up front. I wrote every single word.
Okay, Betty.
Wow.
How long did it take you to write this book?
It took me about 10 months, and the reason it was fairly quick to write 500 pages is because for about 10 years people have been saying, why didn't you write a book? There was a story you told on KROQ about, and they would make me tell them that story. So the stories were very fresh.
Oh, so you had all of them sort of in your mind, yeah.
And a lot of people would say, what did you do before KROQ? And so I would tell them like a little story. And Krista, my wife, happy anniversary, baby, 17 years yesterday.
Wow, congratulations.
There you go. She's 23 now. So
We used to call her your child bride, remember?
well, that was for our wedding present. I got her a pony. And she's as beautiful today. But so I kind of relived all these stories by telling them to people at gigs. So for me, they were fairly fresh. And then I sat down when I was getting ready to write the book. My buddy Stephen Wayne and Peter Facer, who worked with me on Video One and Video Beat, we put out all these photographs out that I've saved over the years and press cuttings. And so I was able to get literally the day and often the time of the events because I'd saved these.
Oh,
things.
it's remarkable. It's remarkable the memorabilia that's in the book. Hey, I got to ask real quick. Thank you for the call, Betty. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
I got to
Betty.
ask because you told a story in the book that I had never heard before. Even though thousands of times Kevin and I have said the world famous KROQ, I never knew where it came from. Could you give us a short version of that story? Because I think KROQ fans will be interested to hear the genesis of that.
We always just assumed someone made it up along the way.
Well, it was a studio a bit like this, only not clean. And not
This studio is clean?
and not as bright. But we were on the air. When I say we, it's not the royal we. It was Ramondo and the Blade.
Okay.
And I'd just been interviewing Tim Ferriss and Michael Hutchins the day before at LA Zoo for MV3, which was a TV show I was doing. And so
Those are guys from In Excess, for folks who don't recognize the name.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they came in on the radio show, and they were so tired. I mean, they were just dragging. And Raymond thought that they didn't want to be there, but they were just tired, jet lagged from Australia, and they'd been doing the interviews all day on TV the day before. And so Raymond was joking with them, oh, you don't want to be here at KROQ. And they said, no, you're wrong, mate. We really want to be here. This was our number one place to come in America. And Raymond goes, yeah, right. And you don't know about us. And they said, no, everyone knows about you in Australia. And Raymond said, well, you can't even get KROQ in Irvine, so never mind.
We have
In
such
Australia.
a terrible signal.
Yeah, and Michael Hutchins looked across the board like I'm looking at you, and he goes, no, mate, you're wrong. You're the world famous KROQ.
Michael Hutchins came up with that.
That's where it came from. And
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And somebody heard that and said, ooh, let's start using that. That's good.
We saved it on a cassette. We had it on a cassette, and the first few drops were times we would play it would be, you're the world famous KROQ, mate. And it was great. And it all goes back to the late, great Michael Hutchins. And coming up on November 22nd, 20 years since we've lost him.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
he
was my
great.
first big girl concert.
In
The
Excess
Kick
was?
tour, yeah.
Yeah.
How about that? Are you surprised, Richard, that it is stuck, that we are still calling ourselves the world famous KROQ? Because it's less true now than it was then.
No, I think you are underestimating it. I mean, for any band coming to America from England, you've got to play KROQ. I mean, if you don't play KROQ, then it's a huge miss for their career. I mean, whether it's Oasis or whether it's Spandau Ballet, it all goes back to KROQ. So, I mean, you guys deserve, credit.
Don't look at us and tell us.
Can I read you one passage that you guys have mentioned in?
Yes, but then we got to go. I'm sorry to say, Richard, we're out of time.
Absolutely. But this is, I wrote this. This is on page 375. I wrote, Kevin and Bean started a new era for the morning program on January the 2nd, 1990. With their arrival, the 80s on KROQ officially ended. The big hair, checkerboard vans, vibrant colors, and free sex of the previous decade disappeared.
Oh, we came at the wrong time.
I know.
You guys effed
That's where
everything
we're going. And was replaced by plaid shirts, torn jeans, grunge music, and the increasing fear of AIDS. And I can't help feel that the great Kevin and Bean got the raw end of that deal. Because I love you.
We don't feel that way. We feel like we're lucky to have ever been here.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I thought, we'll get fired, but I'll be able to say that I worked at KROQ. That's all I could dream of.
Wow.
It's just,
Guys, the book is wonderful, and it's available now. The website is richardbladebook.com. You can order it on Amazon. You can buy it in stores. It's called World in My Eyes, and I can't recommend it more highly. You can listen to Richard on Sirius XM on First Wave, and every weekday at noon on the Flashback Lunch on our sister station, 93.1 Jack FM.
Thank
Young
you so
Dick
much.
Blade,
Can I just say
you're
one
the
thing?
best, man.
yes.
Just hit national
We're trying to
best
say
sell-
goodbye.
Let him say this because he's so humbled. Get this out because it's amazing.
I'm so excited. As we were starting this, Bean, the publisher texted me, and I showed Kevin and Ali. We just hit number 1 on the national bestseller list in 2 categories.
Come on.
So thank you so much. National bestseller. So the book will probably be withdrawn in about 48 hours. No, just to be reprinted with national bestseller. on
You
the cover,
offered to send us one, but I'm going to buy one.
you're
I don't
gonna-
want you to give me a free one. I'm going to buy one.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
definitely.
cool. All right. Thank you so much.